All right. Sorry about the audio issues, guys. I don't know why that happened, but that was an awesome piece of music that Lisa Trescott used AI to develop just for this, our first HETUG CCC TUG collaboration meeting. It's going to be one heck of a meeting, so we're really glad that you joined us today. So, what are we going to do today's meeting? First, we're going to open the floor for announcements. During that time, we'll invite you to come off mute and share anything that you'd like to share, events, jobs, what have you. Then we're going to have National Student Clearinghouse data transfer through two lenses. We're going to look at the community college versus the four-year lens. We're going to have Tatiana Velasco and John Fink from the Community College Research Center talk about some of their dashboards. And then Sam Holmier from San Bernardino Valley College is going to show us how to prep your data for the National Student Clearinghouse. Following that, we'll have our Tableau sorting hat event where Slytherin, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff will vie to see which one has the best sort option. And then we'll have our wrap up and chat. So, does anyone have an announcement you would like to share with the group? If you don't want to come off mute, you can also put it in the chat box, but we invite you to share it with the group.
I have a quick announcement for, I keep freezing. I have a quick announcement for the California community colleges specifically. So sorry if you are not. But the RP group is holding the Summer to Summer Institute this year. So it's a 10-month professional development experience. So there's the link for it if you're, thanks, Roshni. If you're interested in signing up, it's a really great experience. I went through it the first year. I was a researcher and it was very helpful. So just wanted to kind of put that on everybody's radar if you haven't seen the many emails about it already. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Any other announcements? I believe Roshni also put the link in there for our Slack group where you can post jobs on our open positions channel or look for jobs on our open positions channel. I'll make one quick announcement. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who was able to come to Analytics Day. We had, I believe at last count, 1,138 people register, 683 people attended, and almost 300 of those people stayed for 6 or more hours. So that was a huge success. And I really appreciate all of you who attended and participated. All right. Well, if there are no other announcements, we'll just get right into our packed agenda. Turn it over to Kim.
Hi, everybody. There we go. We are super excited to have Dr. Tatiana Velasco and hopefully John Fink at some point here today to talk about the work that's done at the Community College Research Center, or CCRC. Just to tell you a little bit about Dr. Velasco, she is a research associate at the CCRC and the lead author of the Tracking Transfer, Community College and Four-Year Institutional Effectiveness in Broadening Bachelor's Degree Attainment Reports. Dr. Velasco is an economist using quantitative methods to examine students' transition into, through, and out of college, particularly those happening through transfer and dual enrollment policies and practices. And with that, I will turn it over to her.
Hello, everybody. I'm hoping John can join at some point. I know he was on the road after a presentation, but I am just so excited to be here sharing not only, this is a great opportunity because I'll be talking not only about transfer, but also about how we made it happen with the National Student Clearinghouse data and how we build the dashboards that we built. Okay, so let me start by telling you a little bit about the Community College Research Center, about CCRC. At CCRC, we do a lot of partnerships with community colleges across the country to investigate the roots of educational inequality, but not only that, to identify promising approaches, practices, policies, interventions in general that can improve institutions so that they can better support students. We conduct a lot of quantitative and qualitative research, but the idea of our research is that it can be used and the findings and implications of it have practical implications for college leaders, educators, and policymakers so that they can take evidence-based decisions that really get at promoting student success. And in that, we have kind of like 7 areas of research. High school to college, which involves dual enrollment, in which John and I are heavily involved. Developmental education, guided pathways, which I'm sure you've heard about, advising and student support, teaching and learning, and transfer is its own area. And a lot of the research that we do here involves not only transfer metrics, which is what I'm going to be talking about today, but in general, transfer practices, excess credits, all on the spectrum of quantitative and qualitative quantitative and qualitative evidence to better improve transfer. And then in the college to career, it kind of like touches on each of these fronts, and it basically looks at the question of what are the degrees that have the strongest returns, what are the factors related to that, and how can we improve the returns to every degree. Are there any questions? Please feel free to interrupt me along the way. I'm hoping to also be able to reply to your questions as we go.
We will monitor the chat and let you know if anything comes in.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump right ahead about today's topic. So back in February this year, we released 2 tracking transfer reports. The name of the 2 reports combined is Community College and 4-Year Institutional Effectiveness in Broadening Bachelor's Degree Attainment. But they're really 2 separate reports. And the reason why we have 2 reports is because we wanted to provide measures on institutional effectiveness that spoke not only to community colleges, which have been assessed and evaluated in the past with respect to their transfer outcomes, but also to 4-year institutions, because it takes 2 institutions to transfer. You need to go from the community college to the 4-year institution, and we wanted to be able to provide metrics to the 4-year institutions as well in terms of how their students that come from community colleges do. These reports focus mainly on the national level findings. So this time around, we were able to disaggregate the data by student racial background, income background, gender, and we really focused on the inequities between different groups of students with respect to their transfer outcomes. And for the 4-year institutions report, we also looked at the differences depending on the type, the sector, and the characteristics of the 4-year institutions where they landed. The reports present, again, the national findings and the policy recommendations, but since we were using the National Student Clearinghouse data, because these reports actually came up from a partnership with the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center, the College Excellence Program from the Aspen Institute, and us, we saw the necessity to create a tool that would enable people to really dig into their state data, because we were able to offer the opportunity for states to examine disaggregated metrics, not only at the state level, like which are the states with the strongest or weakest transfer outcomes, if you may call it like that, but also for their different student subgroups. But this implies such a richness of data that it just didn't fit into one report. So that's when the Tableau tool came in. I'll get into the Tableau tool later on, but this QR code will get you to the website where this is, but we'll get to that and we'll get to dive into the tool in a few slides. Because before we get into the transfer metrics, I want to talk to you about what is transfer and how we are measuring it in the tracking transfer report. So as I was saying, we are defining transfer metrics for 2 types of institutions, the community colleges and the 4-year institutions. So the like sending and receiving end. And we look at all the students who started in the fall 2015 and who were recorded in the National Student Clearinghouse data, which makes about 670K students. And we look at all the students who started at a community college in that fall of 2015. And we track their enrollment term by term, as is reported in the NSC data, during 6 years after this fall 2015. So what does that imply? Once the students start at a community college, we can measure the institutional transfer out rate, which is the percentage of community college entrants who transferred. And then we can also look at some degree completion or award completion metrics. We can look at the transfer out, and we define the transfer out bachelor completion rate, which is the percent of transfer students, of community college transfer students who complete a bachelor within 6 years. And then the percent of community college entrants who transferred and completed a bachelor's. And that's what we call the cohort bachelor's completion rate. You'll see that we have in total 3 measures related to bachelor's completion, but I'm gonna try to explain to you the difference today. We also have a measure on whether the students who transferred from the community college to a four-year institution did so with a community college award, that being an associate's degree or a certificate. And we call that the transfer in award rate, and that's the percent of transfers who completed that community college degree. Now, what does that really mean? We have the NSC records, we have the number of students who started in the fall of 2015, and we can track them 6 years. And so what we do is that for each institution, we count, for example, for the transfer out rate, we count the number of community college entrants in this fall of 2015 who transferred within 6 years. So total number of students at the institution X that we observe at another four-year institution, regardless of what that institution is, within 6 years from their enrollment, divided by the number of community college students enrolled at that institution. That's the transfer out rate. You'll see that the denominator for this transfer out rate, the number of community college students, is actually the same as the denominator for the cohort bachelor completion rate. This means both metrics are relative to the number of community college students who started in the fall of 2015 at the institution. The cohort bachelor completion rate is the number of community college transfers who earned a bachelor's within 6 years. So during these 6 years, from the fall of 2015, they were at a community college, they transferred to a four-year institution, and they completed a bachelor at that four-year institution, okay? Now, the transfer with award rate and the transfer out bachelor completion rate are relative to the number of community college students who transferred to a four-year institution. So the denominator in this case is what we have here, is the number of community college students who transferred within 6 years, and that's going to be dividing either the number of community college transfers who earned a credential prior to transferring, so that's the transfer with award rate, and the number of community college transfers who earned a bachelor's within 6 years. That's the transfer out bachelor completion rate. So these are the community college transfer metrics. Now, what happens at the four-year institutions? We wanted to be able to speak to four-year institutions as well. Four-year institutions receive a high volume of students who come from community colleges, who were previously enrolled at a community college. And the National Student and the NSC data allow us to measure that nationally and across states. So basically, we look at four-year institutions enrollment in the academic year in the 2015-2016 academic year, and we focus on the students who started at the four-year institution in that year, but who we observed enrolled at a community college prior to that year. So imagine that this is a community college and this is a four-year institution. In our previous metric, we saw the student here. Now we're going to be looking at what happens to the community college student once they get to the four-year institution. We track their outcomes during 6 years, and we measure 2 things. First is the retention rate of community college transfers at the four-year institution, the transfer in retention rate, which is the percent of students retained at the four-year institution and into the second year after transferring. So basically they continue to be enrolled in that second year. And the second metric is a metric about completion, and is the third metric that refers to bachelor completion. And that's the transfer in bachelor completion rate. So it's the percentage of students who completed a bachelor degree at the receiving four-year institution within 2, 4, or 6 years after transferring. And in terms of what are we counting and what are we dividing on, both metrics for the four-year institutions share the same denominator, which is the number of community college transfers at the four-year institution. And we basically are using that to divide either the number of community college transfers retained in the second year, or the number of community college transfers who earn a bachelor within 2, 4, or 6 years after transferring. So we use these metrics for these two types of institutions to look at what happens at community colleges and four-year institutions. So in the community college end, we have kind of like 3 big level findings. The first is that the transfer and bachelor's completion rates of community college students are low, but are even lower among populations traditionally underrepresented among bachelor degree holders.
Tatiana, could I interrupt here for just a second? We had a question come in from Rebecca saying, is the state of the community college student tracked in the last set of metrics?
Yeah, absolutely. So remember that these are all metrics calculated at the institution level, but we can also aggregate them according to the state where the institution is located at. So what we're going to be showing in the dashboard is actually going to be aggregated at the state level. Okay. So on the community college end, yes, transfer and bachelor completion rates of community colleges are low. But when we look at the variation among community colleges, we find that there is a small but noteworthy number of colleges that achieve strong transfer outcomes for Black and Hispanic students. Meaning that even though on average institutions don't do well, there are institutions who have been able to kind of like crack the code in terms of how to help the students transfer and complete degrees, especially their underrepresented students. And the other thing that we're able to do with this data is to examine the transfer outcomes for students who were dual enrollee students prior to their start at the community college. And when we look at the transfer outcomes for this population, what we find is that dual enrollees tend to have stronger transfer outcomes than students who are first time ever in college, meaning they never took any dual enrollment while in high school. At the four-year institution end, we find, and consistent with what we saw for community colleges, outcomes for the community college transfers at the four-year institutions, even after they arrive at the four-year institution, are low. And again, they're even lower for low-income Black students and older transfer students. We do find, though, that the transfer students who earn a pre-transfer award, that being an associate or a certificate degree, while they were community college students, have much stronger post-transfer outcomes. And when we examine differences by institutional characteristics, we find that minority-serving institutions, especially HEPCCs and Hispanic serving institutions, have stronger transfer outcomes, whereas for-profits and predominantly online institutions have the weakest transfer outcomes. Let me show you this with a little bit of data. So here I'm showing you the 4 metrics that I just described: the transfer out rate, transfer with award rate, transfer out bachelor completion rate, and cohort bachelor completion rate. The blue bar is the outcome for all students. And you see that there are other subgroups, Black, Hispanic, low income, and older students tend to have lower transfer out rates, but much lower bachelor completion rates. In general, we tend to focus a lot on these 2 metrics when we speak about community colleges, the cohort bachelor completion rate and the transfer out rate, because they share the same denominator. They both are relative to the number of community college students who started in a given cohort, in this case, 2015, fall of 2015. And another thing that we find is that these results aren't really surprising. Unfortunately, these transfer out rates and these cohort bachelor completion rates are low, but they have been low for a while. They have been low since 2007. Things really didn't move between 2007 and 2015. These are two different entry cohorts. And
Tatiana, we have a couple of questions that have come in.
Yeah.
The first one is from David, who says, low is relative. What are the ranges for low, average, and high in the study?
So that's an important question. I kind of like skipped it for the sake of the conversation, but what we know for the sake of getting to the Tableau analysis. But one thing that is really important in this context is that the majority of community college students aspire to earn a bachelor's degree. Various surveys conducted at community colleges have shown that about 80% of community college students do aspire to earn a bachelor's degree. Yet, only a third of community college students are even being able to transfer to a four-year institution. So that to me is a very strong benchmark of how it should look like in terms of students' aspirations. But even worse, if you focus on the students who effectively transfer to a four-year institution, so let's say that these are the students who effectively do want to get a bachelor's degree, so they move to a four-year institution, only half of them are being able to complete a bachelor's after 6 years of post-secondary education. So that's low as well. And when we look, I'm going to get to that, I'm going to get to the four-year institutions metrics, but when we give them even more time, up to 6 years after they transferred, still only half of the community college transfers have completed a bachelor's. So that's why we say it's low.
Great, thank you. The next question is, are these data slides community college or four-year? So these are community college students, as I understand it, that are transferring to the four-year.
Yes.
Great.
Right now we are on the community college metrics. And I'm actually moving now in this slide to the four-year institutions metrics.
Okay.
Because so this is what happens to community college students in terms of their completion, of their bachelor completion rate. But then what happens to the community college students who get to the four-year institution? And so that's where I say, we look at the bachelor completion rate within 2 years, within 4 years, and up to within 6 years after they transferred. So in this case, we're not even counting the time they were enrolled at the community college. And what we see is that the bachelor completion rates are low. After 4 years of transferring, only half of students on average are completing a bachelor's. And after 6 years, that number increased to only 59%, but it continues to be very low for the other groups, half or less of students. And this is an important, I remember one of the questions that you shared with me, Kim, about the misconceptions that kind of like have been tested with this, or that have kind of, we kind of got like new evidence on that sense, which is the ability of community college students and the resources and motivation and like all the different factors that could explain that a community college student persists while they are at the four-year institution. And, oh no, did I skip that slide? Hold on, because this is important. I'm going to show it to you like this. I'm sorry. And that's that when we examine the retention rate, that is the percentage of community college transfers who continue to be enrolled in the second year after transferring, about 81% of community college transfers continue to be enrolled in the second year. And this retention rate is the highest compared to lateral transfers. So that's students who transfer from a four-year institution, and compared to students who started fresh at the four-year institution. So these community college students are in fact very persistent, yet they don't complete their degrees. All right, Tableau time. As I was saying at the beginning of the presentation, there was a lot of data richness that we were unable to fit in these two reports, but that we wanted to put out there so that people would be able to explore the transfer outcomes for their state and for their predominant subgroup of students that they serve at their institution, for other states that they feel are to some extent a comparison or that they're curious about in general. So we created this dashboard. This dashboard has 5 tabs One is a state overview, so that for each state, you can look at your metrics. In the second tab, you have these sort of like rankings to some extent, sorted by the cohort bachelor completion rate, because we think that this is the most powerful measure in terms of capturing whether community college students are being able to complete bachelors. And we show the metrics by state for community college transfers, for community college institutions and for four-year institutions. In this tab, we show the post-transfer outcomes for students, for community college students who transfer to four-year institutions. So this is basically showing the four-year institutions metrics that we discussed. This tab looks at the outcomes of students with prior dual enrollment. So all our analysis were focusing on first-time in college students, but because we also had the possibility to analyze students with prior dual enrollment, we included their findings in this additional tab here. And then lastly, we can look at the bachelor degree fields that those community college students who completed a bachelor's earn. So basically, we classify their fields in 11 fields, the ones that are here, and we basically look at representation. So whether community college transfers earn degrees in areas similar to the first-time in college students or non-transfer students at four-year institutions, okay? So I'm just gonna give you 1 second to go to the state overview and explore the tabs here. So basically, you can select your state. So I'm gonna assume that most of you will select California, and then you can leave this one unopened, but you can choose the subgroup that you wanna focus on. So the default here is low income, but you could also add Black students. And you could even filter by gender. And in here for four-year institutions, we divided it for public 4 years, private nonprofit, and all sectors. So I'm going to sort these by all sectors. And this basically is a way to get, and I'm actually going to take this out for a second. This is basically a replica of that figure that I showed you with the national level findings of transfer outcomes, the transfer out rate, transfer with award rate, transfer outcome bachelor completion rate, and cohort bachelor completion rate, but for each state or subgroup or state and subgroup. So yeah, I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes to explore the dashboard, to explore the outcomes in the aggregation level that you are interested in, and then we'll get back together and I'll talk to you about how this dashboard came through. The subgroups are mutually exclusive for race, gender, and income. But for example, if you filter by low-income students, then those low-income students are gonna include any low-income students regardless of their racial or gender background. So for example, here.
Do you build your build these dashboards yourself, or is a team involved?
This is a team effort. So basically, I was on the back end with the data, with the National Student Clearinghouse data. And I'm going to show you in a second how we do it. We do a lot of the data cleaning and preparation before we put the tables on Tableau. Mm-hmm. And then John, who is very skilled at Tableau, I don't know if he's present, but he has many Tableau dashboards that look very nicely, and he's just very good at visualizing data and creating data visualizations. He basically like pulls these tables together and creates the final visualization. But this is actually a good lead into what I wanted to show you now, which is how we put these dashboards together. Right. Okay, if you explore the dashboard, you got a sense that basically all the data is aggregated by the state level with some disaggregation. So the disaggregations are by student characteristics, race, gender, income, and by institution sector when that's available. So especially for four-year institutions, we're able to see whether that's a public institution or a private nonprofit. How will we make that happen? So my Tableau data input consists of 5 files. One contains the community college metrics aggregated by state, gender, and subgroup. The other one contains the four-year institution metrics aggregated by state, sector, gender, and subgroup. And the other ones, the next two, the state level information, are just like the state characteristics and then the state transfer outcomes by year, so that you can replicate this like trend line that I showed you in the slides. So we have the transfer metrics for 2007, 2010, and 2015. And then we have the bachelor fields completed, aggregated by state, sector, gender, and subgroup. What does that mean? How does that Excel file look like? The community college table structure, for example, looks like this. So we basically create a file that already contains, for example, here, the cohort bachelor completion rate. This is already the percentage that you would be able to see in the dashboard. And in here are the like different aggregation levels. So Alabama, all genders, and these are the subgroups that we have available. And then by men, all the subgroups, females, all the subgroups. And then a total, which I don't see here, but we do have a total for the subgroups as well.
Quick question from David. The graphs in the written report are a bit different than those in the Tableau dashboards. Is there a reason why?
Yes. So all the data analysis, including the creation of these files for the data dashboard, was done in Stata. And the reason for that is that the way how we work, first of all, it's hundreds of millions of observations because we have national level data with term-to-term enrollment for like all the students who started in 2015. And we worked at the private servers of the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. So we basically have the Stata software in there. We initially created all our high-level descriptive statistics, imported that on an Excel file, created and designed the figures that you see in the report. It was initially just like an output table on an Excel. Then we created the figures in Excel, and then a designer, a graphic designer made it look pretty for the report. So again, most of the work with the National Student Clearinghouse data actually doesn't happen in Tableau. It happens on Stata, Excel, on Stata for the data cleaning, and in Excel for the data visualizations that you see in the report.
So some of the visualizations in the report aren't able to show all of the masked low end values, or I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but is that where the question is coming from in terms of the differences? Or should the numbers be the same across?
The numbers are the same, yes.
No, the numbers are the same, just the look is different.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Sorry. All right.
That's an excellent question, because I think that many of you might be curious to think up to learn how to do all this analysis in Tableau. And my answer to your question is we didn't do it in Tableau. We use Tableau for the visualizations, but we actually try to do most of the data cleaning in a software where we can document the coding that we do, that we can use in the NSC servers, a software that's familiar for our research assistants who work in Stata. So that's how we handle this high volume of data.
Got it.
And so we create this table. So again, for the four-year institutions, for example, you see here that we have the sector, genders, subgroup, and we basically input the metrics that we want to see in the dashboard, so that we use Tableau Public. That's the other thing. I think some of you may use Tableau, the premium version that allows you to write code. We use the public version. And so we basically want to do as little data cleaning as possible on the dashboard. Also to ensure comparability, to ensure that what you see in the report is going to be exactly the same as what you see in the dashboard.
That's wonderful. We have one more question here, at least. Are the bachelor's degrees based on the zip codes? I found this only represented a fraction of the students in a report I created on NSC. This is from Jennifer Fox.
It's only for bachelor completers. And in the data that we got, all students who completed a bachelor did have an assigned 6-digit zip code. I don't know if that's the case for different cohorts of students, but if you constrain to students who complete a bachelor's, we do have zip codes for all of them. Okay, and this is how the data, these different tables look in the back end. So we have the state info file here. That's basically a table with the state abbreviation and the name. And to that table, we add the community college data, the four-year institutions data, and the bachelor's completion data, the bachelor's fields data. And then we also like merge or connect, I think the term is connect, the another file that's at the state level, but that contains only like these transfer outcomes for 2010, 2015, and 2007. So this is how it looks like. Yeah, so for example, here, this is showing the connection between file 2 and file 3. Those connections are done based on the state, the subgroup, that's the student characteristic, and the gender, because those two files match at that level. So I'm gonna click very quickly to show you which files I'm talking about. So this file here and this file here, they basically match by gender, subgroup, and cohort state, right? So that's how we connect those two files. And we connect those two files to the state level file, which I sadly don't have here, by the cohort state variable. So that's the connection that you see here. What is it? Here, cohort state. So file 2, CC data is connected to file 1 using the cohort state variable. Again, basically what I do is that I use the NSE data to compute all the counts that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. We use those counts to calculate the percentages and the different metrics, and to aggregate, and with those counts, we create national level statistics, but also state by state statistics by the different subgroups that I just showed you. And those are the files that feed our Tableau tool.
That's fantastic. That's quite a job.
Yes. So that's all I had for today, but I want to know if there are any questions from the audience.
Jennifer, as a follow-up, indicated that she was going to go back and look at the data to see if there's a difference in the percentages based on zip code. And I think that's it. Thank you so, so much for joining us today, Tatiana. We really appreciate the time that you've spent.
No, my pleasure.
This is a great deep dive. And for those of us, as we were planning this presentation, going in and exploring those dashboards ahead of time gave us a whole bunch of new ideas of work we can do on our local institutions. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And, you know, if you have any questions or follow-ups, feel free to reach out.
There is a question from Bethany, who says, before my institution sees this and wants me to recreate it for my own institution, can I ask how many people went into working on to produce this? And approximately how many hours went into it?
Yes, absolutely. It was my full-time job last year. Basically, since June, July, it became my full-time job at CCRC, and I had one part-time research assistant helping me during the process, only like on the back end. And then John was on the front end, supporting me in many fronts, but also focusing on the development of the dashboard, which took him, I don't know how many hours he assigned to that, but it was about a month. He had other commitments, but you know, it takes some time to brew the dashboard, figuring out what you want to do, get feedback from people, making sure that everything matches. NSE also requires us to do data protection. So we have to mask the cells. And so a lot of the work is about making sure that we are not showing something that we're not supposed to show. So it's a lot of work. Part of the reason why we prefer to do it not directly on Tableau, but rather on other data cleaning softwares that are a little bit more sophisticated, but also flexible.
We had a question from Elena saying, would you do a report for Aspen campus members?
I don't think that's in the works right now from what I know, but you know, maybe in the future.
Okay. Emil says, would it be helpful to get reference files or just the summary files? Would that be possible?
Like the Excel tables?
I'm assuming so. Emil, you want to weigh in on that?
I think that you can, if you download,
Yes.
if you go to the data dashboard and click on the download button for downloading the data, you're going to get basically the same thing because John didn't have to do a lot of data reshaping on Tableau to get these files. So I think that if you download these files, that's what you're going to get. And also, yes, and also if you go to the website of the tracking transfer report in the CCRC website, at the bottom, you'll see a click to a file that says download data appendix. That's going to have a lot of the same structured data that we use for this dashboard.
Again, thank you for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure we will have more questions coming your way shortly. And we appreciate your time and coming and spending all of this time and preparation for this. So thank you again. And with that, I think we are going to hand it over to Sam.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. That was absolutely amazing to see. So thank you so much. I am going to steal the screen share now. And speaking of cleaning NSC data, I'm actually going to show how we clean NSC data in Tableau Prep. So I know most institutions know what the NSC is, right? But I just kind of wanted to go into a brief overview just in case there's somebody that doesn't. But I think it's like 97 or 98% of institutions in the US submit data to the NSC. So most people probably know what this is already, but they have different services. And so these two require your institution to pay to access these services. And so our school pays for Student Tracker. And this is the one that allows us to track our students after they leave our institution, right? So I'm not really going to talk about these first three. It's just the Student Tracker one I wanted to talk about. So these are the 4 reports that you can pull with Student Tracker. So students, this doesn't really apply to California community colleges specifically because we don't deny admission to anybody. But if you want to see who was admitted but decided not to enroll, that would be this report. Prior attendance is where they went before. Longitudinal cohort, I think that just tracks students over time, similar to subsequent enrollment, but this is strictly for after the search date that you put in. And so the one that we use, because we're a community college, I totally forgot to make like an intro slide for myself, but yeah, so I'm from San Bernardino Valley College, and so we only care about where our students go after, so we use the subsequent enrollment file. And so before I get into the actual prep flow, I wanted to talk about our definition. Yeah, it's true too. I am one of the TUG co-leads as well. But I wanted to talk about how we define transfer. And so what we do is we try to match all of our definitions, our local definitions, to how the state defines it. But we can't always do that because the state has access to a lot more data than we do, right? And so this definition on the left over here this is the California Community College Chancellor's Office, so CCCCCO, bunch of C's. And this is their technical definition of transfer. So if you are from a community college in California, this is the metric that you would be looking for on their website. Yes, no, CCCCCO, yes. But so they define transfer as people who left the California community college system altogether, right? So they did not enroll at any community college after they exited the system and transferred to a 4-year. 12 or more units at any community college. So we do just 12 or more units 12 or more transfer units at our college because we don't know how many units they're taking at other schools, right? These are pretty much the same, and then the dates are the same. The other big difference between how we define transfer versus how the state defines it is we don't look at any CC after they've left this, we look at if they enrolled at our institution after they transferred. And that's just to make sure that we're getting them out of our school and into a 4-year, right? And we make sure that the first institution they had attended after ours was a 4-year. And then another definition we have for transfer is within 6 years. So similar to the CCRC, right? So within 6 years of starting at our institution, even if they took like a gap or a break, right? So it's just 6 years. So this is our definition for transfer. And then, so this is the prep flow that I use. And this is just a screenshot of it, but I'll actually go into the prep flow and show you some cool things that prep can do to make it your life a little bit easier. But what it essentially has 3 outputs here, because this flow is actually doing 3 different things. And so let me kind of walk you through the steps. So the first part of this is our NSC data, right? So the data that we've gotten back from the NSC, we put it all into one file, and then we can just refresh the data in this flow and the data will be updated. And then this right here, because we're California community colleges, the majority of our students go to CSUs or UCs. So we have specific fields for those colleges or universities. And then this right here is our active student data. So like our actual students and the enrollment data when they started and ended their educational goals, things like that. This part right here is where I calculate their transfer status. This part over here feeds into a Sankey chart that we have built, which is internal only. But this shows the students' progression from their educational goal to the type of degree or certificate that they were awarded or received, and then to the type of institution that they transferred to, if at all. And then here, what this part is doing is it is allowing us to get all of the students that we need to resubmit back to the NSC. And we only do this every so often, right? This isn't something we run regularly, maybe like once a semester. We'll go in here and we'll research the students that didn't have transfer before, right? And so we'll go and look at students who didn't have transfer before, or we'll look at students who have enrolled since the last time we looked, right? So we're just consistently looking for students. And then, oh, these slides are I meant to talk about this earlier. They're a little out of order. But so the input for the subsequent enrollment report, the way that we match the students, it's very simple. And so it's basically just based on name and birth date. That's really it. We don't give them social security numbers or anything like that. So we have to make sure these are as accurate as possible, right? With no like special characters or anything like that. And then the output that we get is, it's by term, right? It's enrollment by term, not by college. And so what it'll have is it'll have multiple start and end dates for one student at one institution if they were there for multiple terms. And so I have a table, like a mock-up of what it would look like, right? So this is what our output looks like. We get it back. So if one student went to our institution for 2 semesters, they're going to have 2 rows for the enrollment dates and then a 3rd row if they graduated, right? And so the first thing that we want to do with the NSC data is kind of like compress this, because I just want to know when they started and when they finished at their 4-year institution, right? Actually, I don't even want to know when they ended. I just want to know when is the first time they started at a 4-year institution. And so this student went from our institution, San Bernardino, to this is Cal State University, San Bernardino, which is like our sister, not our sister school, but like the school everybody transfers to. And then this is Cal Poly Pomona, which is like our 2nd most transfer school. So this student transferred to both CSUSB and Cal Poly, but I would only count the CSUSB one because that's the first time they transferred to a 4-year. And it was immediately after our institution. And then real quick, so what this is going to look like when I clean it up is it's just going to combine it into one row per college. And so that's one of the first steps that I do. Okay, so real quick, now let me just go into the flow. So this is what it looks like. Well, I guess I showed you this already, but so some of the cool things that prep can do for us is, let me just bring this up over here. So one of the first things that I have it do is it returns this field right here, college code / branch, which can actually get kind of messy because the branches, sometimes the school will have multiple branches. So right here, 1072-00 and then 1072-08. When I bring in these college codes, I just want the first 6 digits. And so what's nice is prep has the split option. So you can either do automatic split, which here, what that'll do is split it across the hyphen, right? I don't want to use that here though, because what it's doing is it's transforming them into numbers in addition to splitting it. So I didn't actually use the automatic split. Let me just erase these. What I did was I did the custom split. And then I don't even care about the branch. I just want the college code. So I'm just going to split off that first field, and that should keep it as a string with those leading zeros. That way, when I match the college codes later, I don't have to do any cleaning on this field. Okay, so that's the first thing I do. To actually do the date thing that I was just talking about, that's in this aggregate step. You could use level of detail functions if you wanted to, but I prefer, within prep, I prefer aggregate steps for the min and max, just because it also removes duplicates at the same time, which is very nice about aggregate steps. And so here, essentially what I do is I just group everything, and then I do the min enrollment begin and max enrollment end. And this is giving me that one row per college that I want with one end date, or one begin date and one end date, and then the first graduation date if they had multiple, right? So this just makes it the data set a lot simpler. Okay, then, so yes, me as well. I hate leading zeros, but we need them. Okay, so the next cool thing, and I'm not going through every single step of this, I'm just trying to focus on prep and the cool things that prep can do for you. And so the next thing I have it do after the aggregate step that's specific to prep is I have it rank our institutions based on the start date, the type of institution that they went to, and how long it took to transfer. So where is that? And what's nice about prep is it can do nested rank, which is my favorite thing. Oh no, what happened to all my data? Oh, okay, 1 second. So this happens a lot where I have to restart prep for whatever reason. I only see one question so far, but yeah, if you have more, how many rows and what is your, I don't know what my CPU power is, if I'm being completely honest. I just know I had to get a more powerful laptop last year. So it's more powerful than the one I was using 2 years ago. Oh, okay, so if you run into that issue, you don't have to restart your computer. This is really annoying, but let me show you a trick for prep. If prep won't start on your computer, go into your task manager and scroll all the way down. It won't be up here. It'll be in the background processes, and then you just have to end that process. It'll be like right here. And so that'll make it so you don't have to restart your computer. But you will have to do that. I was running into the same issue.
Well, I wish I brought this up with you like a month ago.
I was doing that for like 6 months, so don't worry. Yeah.
The number of times I've restarted my computer just to build a new flow it's a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so how many rows? I honestly don't even know how many rows it is. I haven't checked. Yeah. Oh, nice. I've never had to use it for Tableau desktop, but that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so let's see if this is gonna work now. I would populate. It does take like a minute or two to load the data when I first load the flow, just because it is so much. I do know that the all NSC data file that we have still opens without complaining that there are too many rows. So I know it's less than like 1 million rows in that file. Okay, you can still kind of see this. Oh, and you know what? I don't know if I can actually the ID column is hidden, so I don't know if it's going to work. But so what this is doing is it's just, I have a calculated field where it tells me if they went to an institution before or after our institution. And then so I'm ranking it on that. That way I get a separate rank for students who went somewhere after, and then a separate rank for students who went somewhere before, right? And so what this is doing is, since I'm not ranking it on the actual school type here, what I can do is I can tell, did they go to a 4-year institution right after our school, or did they go to a 2-year institution right after? So did they transfer to another community college? And I don't know, this is taking an unusually long time to load, but that's the rank. If anybody wants to see that with the actual data, I can come back to that when it loads. But another thing I wanted to mention here is the dense rank. What that does versus the rank itself is it's just not going to have any gaps, right? So if they have duplicate start dates, it'll assign 1 for both. And then when it jumps to the next one, it'll give it a 2 rather than a 3, essentially. Okay, so the next thing, so that's essentially, those are like the 3 cool things I wanted to show for the portion where I get to the transfer status. And then this portion of the flow, let me zoom out a little bit. So this portion of the flow is what feeds into the actual transfer dashboard. So this right here is what feeds into the transfer dashboard. When it comes to the other pieces, and unfortunately I can't share the transfer dashboard because it's still unmasked data and we're still in like the review feedback processes on our campus. So I'm still waiting for feedback from our transfer center on it. Okay, so for the Sankey chart, there's 2 cool things I like about this, and that is you can, so what I do is I just aggregate everything, and then I count to do a distinct count of the IDs. And let me zoom back in, I just realized it's pretty small. And so what this will do is it will calculate for each step. And I know, I don't know how many of you were present at our CCC TUG meeting where Kim went over her Sankey dashboard, but this is using the same template, right? So I have my filters. So the educational goal is going to be step 1, program award is going to be step 2, and then transfer status is going to be step 3. And so this is how many students are in each one. And then the other columns here are going to be the filters that users can use on the actual dashboard, right? So that's it. For the Sankey chart, it really is just that one step, right? Just aggregating everything so that you can get this field, which I'm going to rename to size in a second. Yeah. And then another thing that I really like about prep is not in this output, it's in this output. So switching gears here, because so now on to the NSC resubmission portion of the flow. What's really nice about this one is when you do replace data in an output for an Excel file, what it'll do is it'll actually just use the same Excel file that it's been looking at and replace the actual data in there. And so you just have to match the column names, right? And so this is probably my favorite part because then I don't have to go in and adjust my data at all. I can just take it and upload it to the NSC immediately or directly. Oh, the only thing I need to do is get names, like student names. And so, yeah, that was a pretty quick demo. I think there's one more thing I wanted to show you. If you remember back to, and I can share it real quick, the dates that the NSC gives are not very nice, right? It's the year, 2-digit month, and then 2-digit day. And so to format dates to be in that format, I guess, it's really nice to do with prep because, so here it is formatted as a date. And then if I just switch this to string, it puts it in the same order. And then all I have to do from there is remove punctuation, and it's in the format that the NSC wants with 2-digit months and days even. So that was very quick. Whereas back in Excel, I was doing like equals year, equals month, right? Things like that. So yeah, this is just nice. And so I think, yeah, so let me go back to that dense rank. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to show about how we clean the data. We don't look at anything about like the degree they received at a 4-year, even the major they're trying to get at a 4-year. We only look at, what's it called? Oh no, hang on. Okay, so it's actually showing IDs there. So let me take a screenshot of it real quick. So that's the one portion, I guess, where it will not keep hiding the IDs. Oh, there's my dog. That's that big sir. Oh yeah, so I know about the identify duplicate rows. I personally still prefer using aggregate steps though, because if you change a field name, your identify duplicate rows step is going to complain at you. I don't remember if this was before or after the road fell in, actually. I remember we did try to go at one point around that time and we could not. So that was fun. Okay, I'm having trouble getting this picture. I'm sorry, everybody. Getting the picture without IDs at least. Okay, so I put it in Paint. Don't judge me for opening it in Paint. It was the fastest. And then I just deleted this part. But so, yeah, what it's doing here is essentially, and this was a very bad section to grab a picture of. But yeah, so it's just going through and ranking students' start dates based on whether they started before or after our institution, right? And I'm having trouble, I can't find a good example. Most of our students ended up not transferring. So, oh, here's a good example. Okay, so here's a better one. So this is one student right here. So after they went to our institution, their first start date was 9/19, and then but while they were at our institution, they started at another one in February 2015. Yeah. So that's pretty much it with the prep flow. Are there any questions that I missed anywhere that anybody can see?
Can I ask one that has nothing to I don't think it's been in the chat. How long has this process of building out this flow and like doing the tweaks, how long has it been sort of start to finish, and just in terms of like how long are you spending on it? Is it, an hour here and there, or is it like I spent an entire week doing nothing but this prep flow?
So I first met with our transfer center coordinator back in September, I want to say, and she had a lot of things that she wanted to include. And so it took about 3 months of just figuring out, okay, how do I get the data to look how she wants it to, right? And then the actual flow itself, I would say took 3 months, about with like me working on it like half of the time I was doing, maybe a quarter of the time every week, right? I tend to go back and forth from projects a lot, so it's taken a little bit longer than I would want, and I just realized I'm still sharing my screen. But yeah, so overall, I would say probably like 6 months start to finish for the flow and the dashboard and everything. Yeah.
Sam, one of the challenges that we also have a similar contract with NSC to do data analysis on what happens to our transfers. But currently, and it's changing, but currently about 80% of our students mark the quote unquote FERPA box on our application, which means that we lose access to knowing what happens to them once they leave us. Have you ever looked at the percentage of students you may not be capturing?
No, and that you mentioned that in another meeting we had, and I wanted to look into that because that's a really good point, is when we compare the transfer numbers we get versus like what the state has, or versus what like the USC or UC or CSU dashboards have, it's very different. And so like we suspect it's because of that. Yeah.
Same.
The flow itself, Lisa, so this one takes like a few seconds to run. This one takes probably like 3 to 4 minutes to run. And this one takes 4 to 5 minutes to run, I would say. Oh, that's one of my favorite things about prep is the colors. I absolutely love the color coding in prep. Any other questions before we move on to our Tableau sorting hat?
Sam, while you were presenting, we have some bad news. We're gonna have to skip the sorting hats today, but it's okay.
Oh no. Oh no.
It's okay.
Oh,
That just means that everyone has to come back when we do sorting hats again later.
okay. The Golden Four, David, is a set of 4 courses that students are required to complete to transfer to Cal State University specifically. So it's English, math, communication studies, and critical thinking. So if they completed all 4 of those courses, we want to know that.
Okay, I think we're good to move to the next one. I just wanted to commend Sam on doing a live demo and working through technological challenges, which is always lots of fun. Been there a couple of times myself, but well done, great presentation. So now you should see the Data Plus Movies slide in front of you, and we wanted to call attention to EduVisors, which is a community project that seeks to provide awesome educational data sets so that people can create outstanding data visualizations. They're joining forces with Tableau's Data and Movies initiatives. So June's data set is the Data Plus Movies Education and Teens version. It's a condensed version of the data set that David Ogden, one of the K-12 TUG co-leaders, has filtered down to 45,000 rows. It includes about 1,500 movies, 35,000 actors and actresses from 1916 to 2022. For example, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Remember the Titans, Good Will Hunting, Carrie, and of course, Harry Potter. And it's not just high school teens in the data. There's plenty of Greek life, woebegone professors, and higher education heroes in the condensed version. Links will be in the chat momentarily for both the Data Plus Movies Challenge and the EduVisors site, where you can find the education and teens data set. And if you're more into the development side of Tableau, Data Dev Day is happening June 20th. An important day for me as well, as Plaid is turning 8 years old. So if you ever wanted to automate exports from Tableau, update your hyperextracts with script, embed your dashboards on a web page, create viz extensions, or use any of the other tools that help make Tableau more flexible, pun intended, check out the virtual Data Dev Day this Thursday, June 20th. One highlight of some upcoming functionality is the VizQL Data Services API, a way to get your data out of Tableau and into other places that you might need it. You can also register to receive the recording later. Tableau is also seeking 2024 ambassadors, and there are many super talented people in higher education working with Tableau. So give it some thought. If you've learned from somebody or know somebody who's making a difference in the community, apply or nominate somebody using the QR code on the left-hand side of your screen, and the links are in the chat as well. The ambassadors get access to a variety of Tableau-related things and act as the voice of the data fam, helping shape the product, events, community projects, and beyond. There's several areas as well for the ambassadors. There's social leaders, Tableau user group leaders, Tableau public, academic, both the educators and students, data devs, CRM analytics, and others. And nominations close July 11th at midnight.
And that's it. We're basically almost on time this time. All right, so what's up next? We really want to know what you thought of today's meeting. So we are posting a link in the chat right now for our feedback form. We have both HETUG and CCC TUG next events scheduled and available for registration. So links are there. So HETUG is on July 16th and the CCC TUG birthday bash is August 14th. CCC TUG is turning 1. It's a fun little age there. HETUG actually is turning what, 4, 3? I don't know how to do math. I work with data. So we're really excited that both groups have sort of, we've made it. We're real now. All right. We also are always looking for speakers, whether at our upcoming birthday bashes or other future meetings. And so links are in the chat to register or to present to speak or to nominate a speaker. If you know someone has done something really cool and you want to hear more about it, feel free to nominate them and we will reach out and say, hey, someone said hey, they really like this thing that you did. Want to talk to us about it? Also, a few additional reminders of things. So earlier, Sam mentioned the RP Group Summer to Summer Institute for California community colleges. The link is in the chat, and we've got not just, so HETUG and CCC TUG are just two of the many, many, many education Tableau user groups that are out there. There's two more that are having meetings next week, separate meetings. So K through 12 is happening on Tuesday, the 25th, if I can do my math right. And I've forgotten what they're going to be talking about, but it looked really cool. Sorry, David. David Ogden, who did the and Rob Kramer, also in the chat. David worked on the Data Plus Movies education set. I'm sorry, I've forgotten what you guys are talking about. I've also forgotten what the MUG meeting is about, even though I'm co-leading that one too. So next Thursday, the Mass Higher Ed TUG or MUG is having a hybrid meeting in Worcester, in the heart of Massachusetts, on Thursday. So go ahead and register for those, and both links, I believe, are in the chat if I, remember to click things. And that is it for today. We are going to open up breakout rooms in a couple minutes. But we want to thank everyone who came to today's meeting, whether you joined for a short time or the entire meeting. We are really grateful that you came. Thank you to Tatiana and to Sam for presenting. And we hope that this HE plus CCC TUG really was a heck of an event, and that you enjoyed it. So again, let us know what you thought. And thank you all for coming and for presenting.